He was tired. Not the kind of tired that comes after a long march, nor the kind that follows a battle fought in mud and snow. It was the kind of tired that seeps into the bones, clings to the breath, and lingers long after the drums have stopped, long after the crowds have gone home, long after the blood has dried. George Washington, President, Commander, Founder, was 65 years old when it came. They say the snow outside was silent that night. No hoofbeats, no cannons, not even the wind. Only the crackle of wood in the hearth, and the faint scent of pine smoke slipping between the roof tiles. That night, he didn't drink, he didn't write, he didn't pray. He slept. And when he slept, he dreamed. It wasn't the dream of a soldier. There were no battlefields, no drums, no marching feet, only stillness. Then, a figure. A woman, surrounded by light. Not beautiful, not terrifying, just inevitable. Like frost on window glass, like the silence before the first shot is fired. He never wrote her name, only that she was not of this earth. She didn't ask questions. She didn't warn. She declared 3 visions, 3 wars, 3 trials that would tear the nation apart long after he was gone. He didn't listen as a general, not as a president, but as a man condemned to witness the body of something he built, broken. The first vision was of rebellion, not the one he had fought, but another, one that rose against the very idea of union. Brother against brother, fields burning in Georgia, cities cracking open in Pennsylvania, blood soaking the soil of Virginia, and smoke rising from Washington, D.C., his name engulfed in flame. But that, the woman said, was only the beginning. When he awoke, he didn't scream. He didn't cry. He wrote. The lines were dry, clinical, without emotion. Not poetry, not lament. Just record, like noting wind speed, or logging the dead. He wrote of a dark cloud stretching across the Atlantic. Of Europe, fractured and desperate. Of America, young, proud, blind, drawn into a war that was never hers. He saw soldiers in blue lost in forests not their own. He saw flags, some familiar, some strange, burning in rain-soaked trenches. And then, stillness again. The page closed. That record, kept inside a drawer lined with mothballs and gunpowder, wasn't read publicly for decades. Some said it was fiction. Others, prophecy. Even skeptics admitted the voice was unmistakable. Not commanding, not hopeful, just resigned. Years after his death, as the Civil War tore the United States into sinew and dust, people remembered the dream. They read those lines with different eyes. When Lincoln fell, they whispered, Washington had seen it. Not the man, but the moment, the collapse, the morning. But the dream didn't end there. The woman in white, silent still, raised her hand a second time. Washington saw cities, his cities, reduced to ash. Not by sabers, not by cannon, but by fire from the sky. Fire not yet invented. He saw glass turn molten, children's shadows burned into concrete, soldiers without faces left to mourn. It wasn't a war. It was extinction. He did not sleep for 3 nights. Martha asked what troubled him. He didn't answer. Winter left few records, a letter, a single medical note. Restless, withdrawn, wakes often, complains of pressure behind the eyes. The physician prescribed fresh air, reflection. Neither helped. He never spoke of the third vision. It wasn't written. It wasn't spoken. Only this line remained, buried deep in a single surviving draft. No more flags, no more borders, no more song. Washington died 2 years later. No wounds, no illness. He simply stopped. A man who had survived frost, mutiny, monarchy, undone by something without a name. The journal was forgotten. Until 1859, a pamphlet in Baltimore reprinted the Vision of Washington for the first time. Anonymous. The pages yellowed. The ink blurred. But the tone, cold, flat, merciless, was unmistakable. Some laughed. Some wept. Most ignored it. Then the wars came. Then the fire came. And now, the silence is coming. When that handwritten copy quietly passed from one hand to another in Baltimore, no one claimed it was real, but no one dared to throw it away. Some kept it under their pillow. Some burned eye tanned, scattered the ashes down basement stairs. A few read it in churches, then silently folded it back as if they'd touched a curse carved in breath. No one signed the last page. No seal, no testimony. But people said there was only one man who could have written those lines. The man who stayed silent for 3 days after the dream. In the South, the war began to bleed. Slowly, like a leak from the foundation. No shouting. No fists pounding podiums. Just doors closing more softly. Unanswered letters. Train cars of weapons sliding through the night without a whistle. And then blood began to spill for real. When the South declared secession, when men who once shared boots pointed barrels at one another, they spoke his name more than ever, not the founder, not the statue, but the man who had seen this coming and couldn't stop it. They said Washington's first vision had been this war. And they weren't wrong. From Gettysburg's soaked fields to Shiloh's open graves, from the stink of burning leather to the silence between ruined camps, the Civil War became an execution. Not of people, but of the very idea called union. No one remembered who fired first. No one cared. Just blood. And the silence that came after the shot. Lincoln was shot in the head. One bullet, quieter than any speech he'd ever given. They returned to the journal. One line stood cold as glass. A leader shall fall by the hand of those he once saved. No name, no date, but many believed it was him. Washington, alive, had never mentioned future presidents. But the second vision had not yet unfolded, and the woman in the light had not yet left. World War I arrived like a fever. No one knew why America, still young, found itself tangled in mud far from home, where blood and chlorine curled together in trenches, where boys crawled from the dirt just to die in it. Washington had written, "I saw descendants buried where no flag flew. I saw Americans laid down in lands no one would ever visit again." At the time, they thought it poetic. Then came Normandy. Then came the fire. And no one called it poetry again. That was part of the second vision. The woman in white remained silent. She raised her hand again. And when fire fell from the sky onto Hiroshima, then Nagasaki, someone whispered his name. Not the president, but the dreamer who had seen a knife that America forged and chose to drop. They said America won. But some quietly burned their copies of the vision at midnight. Then the Cold War began. No bombs fell. No flags burned. Just briefcases of codes, buttons that were never pressed, maps marked with red dots and black smudges. Washington didn't see the summits. He didn't see the leaders. He didn't see the faces. He only saw light. And silence. The woman never moved. She cast no judgment. She gave no comfort. Her shadows stretched across maps, erasing state lines, smudging names written in ink and blood. And when she spoke, if she spoke, it wasn't a warning. It was a statement of something that had already been decided. Washington left no children, no bloodline to carry forward, only a name, etched into the Capitol, pressed into coins, engraved on schools no one entered anymore. No one knew what to do with the dream. It wasn't scripture. It wasn't prediction. It wasn't faith. It was a whisper. In a wooden room. On a winter night. Inside a country that never knew it was already breaking. No one knows when the third dream began. No one ever found a page that described it clearly. No full transcription. No journal entry. No spoken memory from Washington. Only a single note, half erased, scribbled in the margin of an old notebook. No more flags, no more borders, no more song. The woman did not leave. She stood still, not aging, not blinking, not changing. like a stain on a mapone that could not be cleaned, could not be painted over, could not be forgotten. Those who found that scorched fragment tried to explain. An invasion, a plague, a climate collapse. But none of them knew, and none of them could deny, that whatever it was larger than war, larger than destruction. It was disappearance. Washington, if he truly saw it, chose not to record it. Or perhaps he did, and burned it himself. There's a scorch mark at the bottom of his final journal, right where the ink fades, as if someone hesitated, then changed their mind. After 1945, America stood on top of the world, its flag on the moon, its monuments stretching skyward, military bases scattered across oceans, dollars minted like passports of dominance. But the woman never promised victory. She never promised anything. She only showed what was to come, and the silence began to return. Not the silence after a bomb, but the silence before something breaks. Protests that never coalesced. Churches left hollow. Children who no longer remembered the anthem. Storms without rain. Skies without color. And conversations that drifted apart before finishing. Washington once wrote, in a letter to a friend, "Freedom does not die in chains. It dies when no one believes it exists." The letter is forgotten. Not in textbooks, but it was written. The third dream, if it was a dream, was not about weapons, not about soldiers, but something invisible, a hollowing out, a loss without a clear starting point. The borders remained. The flags still flew. The speeches still echoed. But no one stood up anymore. No one saluted. And no one remembered why. Some blamed the internet. Others blamed education. Still more pointed to foreign rivals. But few dared to say, maybe it came from within. Washington was not alive to see it, but he might have seen it coming. The woman always watching was described as one who never blinked, never looked him in the eye, only through him, as if he wasn't real, as if she was standing in another era, one colder, one emptier, one already decided. No historian confirmed the dream. No official archive preserved it. But those who read it, those who kept their copies folded in desk drawers or wrapped in cloth in mountain libraries, they never forgot one final line, a single sentence, scribbled faintly near a page that burned. Everything still stands, but nothing is alive. Washington left no spiritual will. He chose no successor. Left no creed, only scattered notes, silent gaps, and a dream hidden in ash. America did not collapse in fire. It did not dissolve in blood. It did not fall to enemies. It sank, like an empty house, rotting from the inside, collapsing without noise. And no one rang the bell. There were no school bells ringing that morning. Not because teachers went on strike. Not because students were protesting. But because no one opened the doors. The day before, someone still taught. The chalk still marked the board. Desks still held names carved by fingernails. But the next day, no one returned. Not because they forgot, but because no one saw a reason to go back. A school system once envied by the world now stood in silence. Textbooks had their covers torn off, reprinted, rewritten. Not because of new truth, but because the old truth had become unbearable. History wasn't distorted. It was amputated. Pages were slashed. Entire paragraphs replaced with blank space. Children this new generation were taught not to remember. Washington once wrote, "There is nothing more dangerous than repeating mistakes while believing yourself enlightened." That sentence was never quoted. Too quiet to become a motto. Silence began to speak louder than language. The national anthem wasn't sung at the start of the day. No pledges. No flags held to chests. Just conversations in cafes. About crypto. About sleeping pills. About whether moving to Canada would be easier. A child asked his father, "Why does the flag have 50 stars?" The father said nothing. Not because he didn't know, but because he wasn't sure it mattered anymore. This was not war. This was not fire. This was the extinction of memory. A country still present on maps, still tracked by satellites, but absent in the hearts of its own. And the woman still silent, still luminous, stood through it all. Unblinking, unchanging. Some tried to rewrite the dream. They sat around a wooden table. No phones, no microphones, only paper. They copied it by hand, line by line, each person trying to capture what Washington might have seen. At the end of each draft, they wrote the same final line. No one remembers where it began, but it ends here. They didn't publish. They didn't post online. They printed only a few copies, sealed them in glass jars, buried them in backyards, as if the words had to be hidden, but not lost. On the coasts, the seas rose. Not violently, not with storms, but like water that simply walked into the yard. Neighborhoods emptied, not from floods, not from crisis. People left, quietly, like renters leaving a home long overdue. No one shouted. No one held signs. No one declared anything. Everything faded, like a candle burning out in a room no one was in. The statues began losing their heads. Not from vandalism, not from protest. They just crumbled, one piece at a time. Rain peeled their names. Acid dissolved their inscriptions. No one cleaned them. No one rebuilt them. No one noticed. No one remembered who George Washington was. Just the name. On the money. On street signs. On school plaques. In schools no one attended. And the dream, if it could still be called, that was now real. Not through war. Not through collapse. But through the slow retreat of meaning, the woman in light finally closed her eyes. Not to leave, but because there was nothing left to see. But no one asked for anything. No one needed miracles. They needed signal. Washington never wrote much about religion. He neither praised nor condemned. Just once he wrote, "A nation that believes in nothing will believe in anything." That line was never quoted. It was too quiet to chant, too flat to preach. But now it echoed in a country filled with sound and emptied of meaning. From cities to rural towns, people still worked, still bought, still drove. But inside, they had already withdrawn. No one fought for values. No one defended ideals. They wrapped themselves in small shells and lived as if everything had ended long ago. Just no one had said it out loud. Television still broadcast, but news wasn't news. Just noise. Politics still operated, but like a machine that no longer needed drivers. No one knew what they were opposing anymore, only that no one trusted the outcome. There was no rebellion, no riots, just people who didn't believe anything could change. No enemy took America apart. America dismantled itself, layer by layer, symbol by symbol, belief by belief. The words once carved into children's hearts, freedom, justice, equality, now worn thin like stickers on dirty glass. Washington never spoke of that kind of loss, only of the feeling of being watched. Not by foes, not by citizens, but by something deeper, a gaze that stretched through time. The woman in his dream never smiled, never threatened, never comforted. She only existed. A reflection, a witness, proof that nothing more could be said. In the last remaining classrooms, students weren't taught the Constitution, not because it was banned, but because no one remembered how to teach it. The pages on the Founding Fathers faded, not from age, but because they were never reprinted. A boy was asked, "Who is George Washington?" He answered, "A street." He wasn't wrong. A street, a school, a bus stop, a name with no one left to carry it. And the woman still there, no longer needed to watch. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to act, because everything had already happened. When no one believes in anything, people begin believing in nothing. No one died. No one fled. No one was taken. They just went silent and forgot how to say what was real. A country built on words, on declarations, on pledges, on promises, now fell apart not by bullets, but by the complete absence of language. Washington warned of this once. Not in a speech, not in a proclamation, just a final note, buried in a private letter. Nothing is more terrifying than a future where no one feels the need to speak the truth. And that's when the woman in the light began to walk away. One step, no hurry, no direction, simply leaving. No one saw it. No one filmed it. No one recorded it. Because by then, there was no one left to record. There was no sound when she left. No footsteps. No goodbye. No gesture of departure. The woman in the light, the only witness to Washington's entire dream, turned and walked into a space where no one remained to see her go. That was when America reached a place no revolution had ever touched. To exist without a soul. Agencies still opened their doors. Courts still issued rulings. Police still patrolled. But no one believed anymore. No one feared. No one felt that anything sacred was still functioning. The government didn't collapse. It simply stopped being real. People still paid taxes, because the system still moved, but no one read the documents. No one debated the laws. No one remembered what the First Amendment said, or the Second, or the 14th. It was like a body moving without a mind. America, too, kept its posture, long after its substance had decayed. No disaster arrived. No virus. No war. No invasion. No coup. Nothing destroyed America. America quietly left itself behind, piece by piece, generation by generation. Not by force, but because no one wanted to carry it forward. The Lincoln Memorial wasn't toppled, but the steps leading to it grew weeds. No one trimmed them. No one climbed them. No one looked into that granite face and felt anything anymore. On the square, a man walked with a flag. No one stared. The flag didn't wave. No one knew if he carried it for love, for mourning, or simply because he didn't know what else to do. Washington once wrote, in the last draft of an unpublished paper, "I fear a day when the name remains, but no one remains who knows why it matters." The third vision never described that day. It didn't show collapse, just absence. When words like freedom, Constitution, Union, the American dream were no longer torches in the dark, but bolded terms in textbooks no one studied. A small group gathered in a basement. Not to resist, not to rebuild. They just sat and read the dream out loud. Copies they had handwritten from memory. They didn't debate. They didn't explain. They didn't nod. They just listened. At the final line, they turned off the lights. No one stood. No one left, because there was nowhere else left to go. A child asked her mother, "Is America real?" The mother paused, then answered, "It was, but now it's just a story before bed." In the place once called the Capitol, wind passed through columns stripped of meaning. No flags, no lights, only stone steps worn smooth by time, and a silence so wide no one could hear themselves anymore. No one buries a country. There is no funeral, no brass band playing sorrow into the air, no farewell speech echoing through the marble halls of Pennsylvania Avenue. Only walls, stained by years, streets without names, children born into a world where they no longer feel like they belong to something greater. Washington once wrote in a letter no recipient named, "One day, even the name will be stripped of meaning. We will no longer be Americans, just people who belong nowhere." The third dream never said this. It didn't show endings. It showed only emptiness and the blank space growing inside each person. It wasn't a war. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't hunger. It was erosion. Slow, without sound, without resistance. A nation that once lit fires with its words now stood cold because no one dared to speak anymore. Government buildings still had names, but the people inside no longer believed they meant anything. They followed orders, filed paperwork, moved money, but they no longer felt anything beneath their hands. Poets stopped writing. Musicians stopped composing. Filmmakers stopped filming, not because they were silenced, but because nothing felt worth saying anymore. A grey-haired man stood before the locked Capitol and read the Declaration of Independence aloud. No one stopped him, but no one listened. Each word fell to the pavement, like wet ash. No echo, no flight, no residue. The woman in the light had vanished. No one noticed when. No one knew where. Maybe she had never been there. Maybe she was the silence. The only part of the dream that stayed once all the words had gone. Washington has no tomb for a nation, only a cold grave in Mount Vernon. People still visit, not to remember, but to look, like tourists standing in the ruins of something they never lived in. No one mentions the dream anymore. No one repeats it. No one admits it ever existed, which means it no longer has to be true or false. It simply drifts away, like the name of a man no one remembers the face of. A child asked, "Is America real?" The mother waited, then answered, "It was. Now it's just something people say before they fall asleep." Where the Capitol once stood, the wind slides through empty columns. No flags wave, no lights shine, only the stone stairs, rounded smooth by time, and a silence so total, even the shadows forget how to move. The dream is over. Not with a bang, not with weeping, but with a gust of wind, carrying a name away.